Welcome to Dragon Longevity. I have a great guest today. I have Suzanne Casamento, who's an author and a healer. And I met her at a biohacking event in Venice, and I was really intrigued by her story and how she helped her cure herself or heal herself with Lyme disease. And maybe that's still an ongoing battle. But we're going to drop in with her. Nope, she says no. We're going to hear how she did that. And she did it using a pulsed electromagnetic field device. And she's going to talk about that. So, Suzanne, welcome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how we got here?
Thank you so much. Um, yeah, so like you said, I am an author, and I was bitten by a Lyme infected tick in 2003 in New Jersey. I was visiting New Jersey. I live in Los Angeles, and I was told to take antibiotics. And of course, at first I was given the wrong antibiotics. It was really kind of a wacky situation. But when I finally got on the right one, I returned to Los Angeles, and I was actually bitten by a black widow spider when I got home. And the antibiotic that I was on for the Lyme actually saved me from death by black widow. So that was kind of wild.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I was going to Western doctors, and they told me to take antibiotics. And then after about 3 months, I took a titer test, which was the most advanced test at the time in 2003. Or, I mean, maybe there were more advanced tests, but it was the one that was, used. And the titer came back negative, and the doctor uh, said, just go on, pretend you forget you ever had Lyme. Just go ahead and live your life. And I was like, okay. So 9 years later, I moved into a little beach shack, which had hidden mold, but I didn't know there was mold in it. And the mold re-triggered my Lyme disease. And what was so weird is that, you know, I thought that Lyme disease meant swollen joints and lots of joint pain and aching and all of that kind of stuff. And that is not how it manifested for me at all. Um, for me, Lyme showed up as chronic infections. And I later learned that it attacks your weakest systems. So for me, that was the excretory system. So I kept getting bladder infections and kidney infections, and urinary tract infections, vaginal infections. It was horrendous. And I was going to doctor after doctor who was like, just giving me antibiotics. So take these antibiotics and you'll be fine. And, so meanwhile, I'm taking all these antibiotics, and then my body is becoming overloaded with yeast, and, everything is totally thrown out of balance. And I just kept getting sicker and sicker and had no answers. Um, and then I went to a Chinese herbalist who did muscle testing, and she tapped on my face and said, "You're living in high levels of mold, and you need to move immediately." And I was like, "What?" Like, this was in 2015, and I thought she was crazy. I didn't see any mold in my home, and how would she know that from just tapping on my face? So, a few weeks later, I pulled a T-shirt out of a drawer, a black T-shirt, and there was this like white powdery film on it. And I took it outside and laid it in the sun, and the film disappeared. And I was like, "Oh my God, there's mold." So through research, then I began to research mold and how do you clear mold from your body and all of that. And that's when I discovered that there was a connection, and that mold exposure could re-trigger Lyme disease and turn it into chronic Lyme disease. And that's when everything was like, oh, that's what all these infections are from. And this is why I feel so terrible. And so that was the big revelation. But then I couldn't figure out what to do. Like, so how was I going to fix it, right? So I kept going to doctor after doctor after doctor. And of course, I live in the United States. So I was incurring incredible medical debt, medical debt, medical debt, uh, and, and I was broke and I felt horrible. My head felt like it was a bowling ball, and um, I couldn't think clearly, and I had daily fevers, and most of my hair had fallen out, and my skin was kind of green, and my toenails fell off, and I had a white furry tongue, and I mean, I was sick, and visibly sick, and I was going to doctors who were saying, "Well, you look good. Are you sure this isn't in your head?" So, so I started to, so I went back to that Chinese herbalist, and she was giving me herbs that would help for a bit, but then I'd start to feel terrible again. And I, at the time, was seeing a somatic therapist who was incredibly helpful when it came to try to reassociate with my body, because I had realized that I had all this trauma that was unhealed, and that was also affecting my physical body. And I had gotten to the point where I was totally disassociated from emotions. And so we worked to get me back into my physical body, and we did things like EFT tapping and breathwork meditation. And then I saw, a Reiki practitioner and energy healers and a shaman, and the more woo woo I got, the better I felt. So I just went down that path, and then one day I kept hearing about Amp Coil, which is the sound and PEMF device, which tunes your cells to their optimum frequencies. It excites them, helps them breathe and dump their garbage, and open up the energetic pathways so the body can actually heal itself. And I got one, and within a year, I felt amazing. So I had been sick for 7 years up until then. So I've been using the Amp Coil ever since, and now I help other people with it.
And so, how big is that? It's like the size of a basketball, kind of, and you like put it on your chest or put it on the area that you're working on.
Yeah, so there is a coil that is sort of like donut shaped, right? And yes, it's about the size of a basketball. And so we generally keep it on the torso because that's sort of the middle of your body. Uh, but if there is a specific area where you're experiencing pain, so let's say you have shoulder pain, you could put it right on your shoulder, or knee pain, you could put it right near your knee. But but yeah, generally put it on your torso, and it uses the pulsed electromagnetic fields and sound to shift, get your cells moving, shift stuff.
Is it in a certain frequency, or can you change the frequency? Is it like 432, or what is the frequency?
So this technology is amazing because it's different than other PEMF devices where you might set the frequency and then have a zzz at that frequency for a certain period of time. It's actually been engineered so that there are what they call journeys, which are kind of like songs. So they compile these journeys with different tones and then different pulsed electromagnetic fields for different targets, different challenges, if you will. So, for example, there's a journey called the harmonizer, and the harmonizer does it contains frequencies that are associated with grounding and chakras and horizontal and vertical alignment and emotions and spinal and nutrition. So it's sort of like a general, it just feels great. There's another journey called Relaxol, which works to calm the nervous system and reduce rapid thoughts. There's another one called Balance the Mind, which really helps with like focus and helps to energize you. And so there are some high level journeys like that they call rejuvenating journeys. Um, and then it gets a little more targeted. So there's a 30-step detox album where you can go in and you can detox the liver, detox kidneys, or airways, or the brain, or um, skin. And so it gets a little bit more targeted. And then there is an A to Z library where if you know that you've been diagnosed with something, you can go in there and select like Epstein-Barr virus or um, HPV or chlamydia or any of the herpes viruses. And then you can create journeys for those things. So it has like hundreds of combinations. I mean, maybe even thousands, because, like, for example, I've had clients come to me who want to clear parasites. And so um, there are 5 different parasites in the A to Z library. There's amoeba and flukes and pinworms and roundworms and tapeworms. So I had one woman come to me who knew that she had flukes, so she just wanted to clear the flukes. Um, but other people have come and we've then cleansed all 5 of those things. So you can create any combination you want. You can go in there and do, heavy metals and candida, or fungus and bacteria, or it's kind of cool because you can the options are endless.
Who programmed it? I mean, who made this particular? Like, who made all the songs, if you will, the programs?
Yeah, so Amp Coil was actually developed by a couple who had chronic Lyme disease and, much like me, could not find answers, and went to doctor after doctor, um, and just had horrible experiences. So they created the Amp Coil and worked with engineers uh, to create all of these to these different journeys. A lot of the journeys have a Lyme focus. So, for example, there are Lyme co-infections in the A to Z library that normal people, wouldn't necessarily use, like, frequencies for Babesia or Bartonella or Rickettsia. These are all Lyme co-infections, and tick-borne illnesses. While there are a lot of journeys for Lyme-focused things, there are also journeys that will help everyone, like
Mhm.
circulation or lymphatics detox, or there's one for hair, skin, and nails. You can
Right.
basically do anything with it. So yeah, so the engineers they have targeted a lot of Lyme Lyme associated challenges, but there are also journeys for everything.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think sound and frequency is really a future of healing as we learn how our cells really react to sound. One of the theories I have is that we're so out of balance in society is because all of our music is now like digitized, and so it's not in 432, it's in 440, and our whole everyone who listens to music is a little bit out of frequency. When you put out an
Absolutely.
album, it's 432.
Yep. Yes. Yes. I mean, that's such a great point, right? Um, yeah. And there's so many, and it's interesting because, when you go to see a concert, right? And the music is live, it's like, how you feel when you go to a concert. I mean, your whole body's buzzing.
Yeah.
And so this device can kind of can do that on a micro level, and get your cells going the way music does. It is amazing what music can do for the body.
Oh yeah, I mean it's that the Bob Marley, when it hits, just feel no pain, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, it's amazing. But that's the frequency. I mean, we're all vibrational energy, and everything that comes in and affects our vibration is going to affect it, like skipping a stone on the water, right? So
Yes.
when you're around high vibrational people as well as conscious people, that also you can feel that as well, and also the vice versa, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think more people are becoming aware of that, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was at the Conscious Life Expo this weekend, and I I I spent a whole day just dropping from like vibrational chamber to Tesla coil to, sound massage bed that had a shamanic journey attached to it and would shake and vibrate to the music. It was all, these new modalities that we didn't see even a few years ago. I mean, I'm sure the coil is still new to me. I mean, it's a brand new technology to me, so I don't pretend I know anything really about it. But you see, people are being much more open to receiving these types of treatments, rather than in the past of just completely woo woo, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's pretty funny looking. I mean, it's like an orange coil, and you lie on the ground and put it on your chest, right? For what, 20 minutes or so, generally? Or how long are the sessions?
Yeah, I mean, they're anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour, but most of them hover around 33 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really
Mm-hmm.
interesting. What exactly is Lyme disease? I mean, we always hear Lyme disease, but like you said, it shows in the indications in the swollen joints or whatever. It really demonstrates it in very different modalities for different people. Like you said, it attacks your weakest area, so it can come from like so many angles, right? But what exactly, like, if you had to define what is really happening, what is it?
Well, I mean, and you make such, yes, I mean, you make such a good point that it looks different in everybody. So that makes it even trickier to diagnose and really, I mean, in my opinion, the Western medicine approach to Lyme disease is ineffective. So, you know, um, so it is a tick-borne illness. There's the Borrelia bacteria, which, um, when a tick bites someone, can be transferred from the tick. It is also research is showing that um, it can also be transmitted through mosquitoes and other kinds of bugs now, and also congenitally. So, like I have a friend who passed Lyme disease to her children. So,
Whoa.
yeah. So, and of course, these are things that, the CDC says is false, but, we know people that it happened to. Um, so that is kind of creepy, and but that's kind of where it's at. So, um, the Borrelia bacteria itself is shaped like a corkscrew, and it has a biofilm. So, a normal cell is usually round and doesn't have I'm sorry, a bacteria cell is usually round and doesn't have a biofilm. So antibiotics work by uh, by eating and attacking the um, oh, what's the word I'm looking for? The outer skin, the outer
Membrane.
the thank you, the cell membrane.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so it's very difficult to, um, it is very difficult to kill the Borrelia virus for two reasons. One, it's like a corkscrew, so it screws into tissues very deeply. And the other is that it is covered with a biofilm, which most antibiotics cannot penetrate. So that's the one thing. And then also, often, so when I was first diagnosed, the doctor gave me 10 days of amoxicillin, which did nothing.
Hmm.
So I had a massive bullseye on my back, and that's another misconception. So so sometimes when people are bitten by a Lyme infected tick, they a bullseye rash will appear, which is a rash that just looks like a bullseye, right? It's got
Mhm.
the bite in the middle, and then there'll be a paler ring, and then a red ring. Um, it only appears in about 50% of cases.
Right.
So most people don't know that they were ever even bitten.
Yeah.
I happened to know because my bullseye was gigantic. It was on my back and it was extremely painful to the point where like I couldn't stand up straight because it hurt too much. So I was bent over. And 5 days into my amoxicillin, I was still bent over and in pain. And I went to that emergency room, and the emergency room doctor laughed at me, told me I was dramatic and I should go home.
Mm.
Uh, and then I ended up seeing a Lyme specialist who told me that I was not being dramatic and that I was on the wrong medication, and that the tick had actually been embedded in my back for several days, and uh, and so I was then put on the proper medication, and
Which is what?
and then I had a massive rash
What's the
from the
proper
proper
medication?
medication. Oh, sorry, doxycycline. So
Yeah.
normally, and the course of doxycycline should be at least 30 days, preferably 6 weeks. Whereas, that first doctor gave me 10 days of amoxicillin. So, which is the wrong drug and not enough time anyway. So, yeah, so it's often misprescribed, it's often misdiagnosed and then misprescribed in the beginning. The idea is that if you do the proper doxycycline treatment within the first few days or weeks of being bitten, that you should be okay. But it's one of those things that that may never fully leave. It's like how we have the low grade viruses like EBV and HPV, and all of us, or most of us, have these low grade viruses in our bodies. And Lyme can come along and then, be that thing that blows all of them up. And so Lyme can be the same way, right? Like that bacteria, you could think it's gone, but it could be a low grade thing. And then boom, you move into mold and it all explodes like it did for me. So, and the other thing about Lyme disease is that it brings along a lot of co-infections. For me, those co-infections were Epstein-Barr virus and urea plasma, which is a type of mycoplasma that attacks the excretory system. And but other people have 10 different co-infections. And what I've come to learn is that the higher your toxic load, the worse you're going to be feeling, right? So for me, when I finally found people who could help me and got proper testing, I I had very high mycotoxin levels from living in mold, and I had heavy metals in my body were so high that the mercury was literally off the chart. Lead to cadmium and nickel. Those were my highest metals, and I kept saying, well, how could this happen? How could this happen? I'm not licking lead paint, and that's when I started to realize that our water is full of heavy metals, our soils are full of heavy metals, pesticides are full of heavy metals. That it's a battle to live a clean life in this world that is constantly polluted. So often Lyme patients will have very high heavy metals, have very high molds, very high candida levels, lots of low grade viruses that that then get kicked up. And so it's just a total storm in your body. And and it's so incredibly difficult to navigate because the immune system is totally overwhelmed. I don't know if that explained it or made it more unclear.
Well, that's what people describe it as, and that's the thing because it like kind of just destroys your basic systems, and allows other systems to come in, which I think it actually has a lot to do with the microbiome. I mean, it's how you are able to process those metals out, and you're not able to clear those out because it's your immune system is focused on, the frontal attack of the Lyme, and it allows the backdoor pathogens to come in. Essentially, the nutrients are not being consumed and allow the. This is just my opinion. I mean, I don't know really any basis behind it, but it seems like the nutrients are available for the pathogens to take hold, right? And that's my take on it. Have you read it? This may not be a great book for you to read if you're not familiar with it, but the Lab 257 book, where the the theory of this is actually it was it's a Nazi generated bio disease that they brought back from post World War II. They brought the Nazi scientists for the rockets and the space program, but they also brought them for other programs as well, and they set them up on Plum Island in New York. You know this whole theory? Yeah, it's terrifying because originally, if you went there and you brought your dog in the 50s, they shot your dog. Like you weren't allowed to bring your dog to the island, and they would shoot it because they had so many. Because the ticks got loose on the island, and then they stopped funding for it, and then all of a sudden, Lyme, Connecticut is directly across from Plum Island, and that's where the first cases of Lyme disease developed, where they had a Nazi program on Plum Island for germ warfare, and they kind of defunded it, and that's why it is so heavy in the northeast as well.
Yeah, that is totally believable to me. I have heard that story, and it is totally believable to me. And I mean, it also explains a bit. The CDC only recently actually acknowledged that chronic Lyme disease is a thing.
Mm.
And, the approach is you take your 30 days of antibiotics and then you're done.
Mm.
I mean, can you imagine with cancer if it was like, well, you take your chemo and then you're done? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, that does not mean that it's gone, and you've been treated and so it's a really, it's a very strange, the CDC's, um, what's the word I'm looking for? The, their description,
It's all
their
cover up. It's a cover up of something they messed up. You know, you could see it. They're trying to. Oh no, you're fine. Go carry your way. Don't ask too many questions here.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what it feels like to me. That's what it feels like to me. I mean, even things of like, like I mentioned before about passing it on congenitally. Um, it happened to my friend. CDC says impossible.
Yeah. Well, that's it's. Well, I'm glad you found the coil, and what do people? You do sessions with people around LA? Is that where you live? Is this your home base?
Yeah, so I live in LA, and yes, people come and do sessions, and I mean they come for everything from pain and anxiety, and a lot of people want to come for parasites, to clear them. They come with digestive issues, a lot of recovery from injuries. So, when any kind of physical injuries, people like to come for recovery. Bone regeneration, that's a big one. Um, I mean, it's amazing for that. My mom last summer bought an Amp Coil, and she had been diagnosed with osteoporosis about 5 years ago, and she bought an Amp Coil last summer, and every week, just once a week, was running the bone generation regeneration journey, and she did her bone density test a year later, and the bone density in her spine had increased by 11%, and she was no longer in osteoporosis.
Awesome.
So, yeah, and I love when there's actual testing to back it
There's
up.
data. Yeah.
Yeah, the
Doctors
data
like,
is
what happened here, right? The Western doctor is just baffled.
right, right. Her Western doctor said, "Well, I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it."
Yeah, that's good. At least supportive.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us today. I appreciate it. It's really
Oh,
interesting.
thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you for Dragon Longevity. If you're interested in trying out the Amp Coil, I'll have some show notes on how you can contact Suzanne. Thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.